the very essence of reality. We misunderstood Don Quixote life sometimes begins on the back of a horse. For some of us, that horse is an idea. For others, a dream. For others still, merely an escape. Don Quixote's story begins right here, with a man who sets out not to escape, but to believe. Now let us all ask ourselves this question. Which is the true madness? To dream, or to live without believing in anything? Alonso Quijano, who lived in La Mancha, was an ordinary man who drew no one's attention. But at night he became someone else. He read old knightly tales, lost himself in the yellowed pages, swords clanging in his head, dispensing justice in distant lands. Just as we today watch other lives with influencer worship on social media and hate our own lives, he belittled his own reality as he read those stories. But unlike us, he took it one step further. He decided to build his dream. One morning, he donned old rusty armor, named himself Don Quixote, mounted his horse, and set off. Up until that moment, everything was real. But reality is sometimes just a collective agreement. If everyone calls a windmill a mill, then that's what it is. But when Don Quixote said, "No, it's a giant," perhaps he was right for a moment, because truth is born from the wound in the eye of the beholder. He set off, but he wasn't alone. Sancho Panza, perhaps the most honest realist in world history. Yes, he wanted to dream too, but his calculation was clear. I'll get some land, build a house, as long as I accompany this man. The modern equivalent, like people who join a venture saying, "Bro, it's a nice project. Maybe we'll make some money." Don Quixote, the fire of dreams. Sancho, the calculator in his pocket. Together, they are actually us, the dreamer who is still a child inside, and the adult who pays the bills. When the scene of the battle with the windmills came, everyone laughed. We laughed too when we first read it. But let's stop and think. How many people today stand up to the system's seemingly giant cogs? And how many of us surrender to the comments on our phone screens saying, "You can't do it"? Don Quixote may not have fought giants, but he fought the surrender within himself. When they arrived at an inn, Don Quixote saw it as a castle. The innkeeper treated him like a king, because sometimes people respect not your dream, but what you believe in. He took the knightly oath. At that moment, perhaps for the first time in history, someone declared themselves and acquired a title. Are you surprised by today's social media world, where if you say, "I am an artist," you are considered an artist, and if you say, "I am a content creator," you are considered a creator? The path has been this way for a long time. Reality becomes real most when it is repeated. On the road, he encountered people who had been wronged. He tried to free the slaves, but the slaves did not run away. They returned. Because for some people, freedom is frightening. Breaking the chain is easy, but living without chains requires courage. This scene tells us, Don Quixote's battle was not with people, but with the chains they had grown accustomed to. The most painful part? No one fought him, everyone just laughed. The world often doesn't stop you, it just makes you the subject of ridicule. And ridicule is sharper than a sword because it targets the soul. But Don Quixote didn't stop. He continued, because the world he believed in was more real than the world he lived in. And then he was defeated, because every dreamer has a breaking point. They told him, "You are not a knight. The windmills are not giants either." And perhaps for the first time in his life, he truly looked in the mirror. Perhaps for the first time, he doubted. At that moment, Don Quixote was no more. Alonso Quijano returned. He lay down on his bed. His dreams were extinguished, And strangely, people found him more normal in that state. But with his last breath, he asked, was it crazier to dream or to never try? Now I leave the question to you. When we laugh at Don Quixote, who are we really laughing at? The childish part of us that tries to build utopias? Or the adult version of ourselves who says, I'll start tomorrow, every day in front of the screen? Perhaps that's why we misunderstood Don Quixote. He didn't fight. He just believed. And perhaps in this age, the greatest giant is the feeling of not believing.